ago when we were in Pakistan, I asked several members of the Pakistani cabinet why they had accepted the Indian hand on the one hand and hit them with a closed fist with the other hand. There was no answer. There was no answer. One minister said something like, it was probably not very good timing. Now, in my view, that's no answer. And I think that for that reason, I want to be optimistic and I want to be positive, but I am somewhat skeptical of the position in which I think General Musharraf finds himself. While his comments are generally positive in the press, and I tend to believe that he is sincere in that, the fundamentalists are making it extraordinarily difficult for him, it seems to me, to actually carry it out. I remember a story told about the Cold War, about President Eisenhower and Brezhnev, how people said they could have resolved the Cold War. Neither one of them wanted to bomb each other out of existence. But whenever they talked to one another, they were always talking to the people behind them, that is their constituents, not to one another. If they could have just talked to one another and not had to worry about what was going on behind them, they could have resolved it. And I see General Musharraf in many ways in that same situation as he comes forward in this present effort. But I really hope that it's possible for them to continue what has once again been started. Some people in India, as well as in the United States, have criticized Prime Minister Vajpayee's government for extending a hand to the general for fear of providing legitimacy to his unelected military government. Some people criticized President Clinton. When I went with him, there were about 10 of us went with him on the trip to Bangladesh and India and Pakistan. By the time we got to India, it was down to 4 of us who would go all the way with him because there had been so much turmoil about whether the president should actually go there. And in fact, I heard some of this when I announced in February that I was going to go. But I'm as enough of a student of politics that I can understand the complaints. I can understand what people are worried about. This is a military government that overthrew an elected government. But I think that Prime Minister Vajpayee made the right decision in reaching out to them to deal with this government. However illegitimate it may be, it is still the power that has to be dealt with. That's not me. There we go. Thank you. To cut Islamabad out of the loop now would be, I think, very ill-advised. I think in some ways Delhi tried to circumvent Islamabad and talk directly to the Hurriyat with no avail, and hence the unilateral ceasefire was not extended. It didn't work, and I think that I'm not sure exactly. I've been waiting for somebody to tell me why the ceasefire didn't bring a better response, but I'm still listening. But it seems to me it's time to recognize that, legal or not, General Musharraf wields the power, and that he is someone who could hold sincere and candid discussions with India. Now, I doubt that the right wing in Pakistan would have entertained Prime Minister Vajpayee's overtures. I don't think they would have been interested at all. And so I think that Musharraf gets some credit for having at least said, yep, I'll come over and do it. In my view, Kashmir is an integral part of secular India. There's no doubt about that. And there's no real doubt that it should remain as such. However, we as friends of India must look toward the stability of Pakistan and ensure that Pakistan remains on the road toward becoming a real secular democracy. Pakistan has had the potential to be a great asset to India or a fatal flaw. If Pakistan fragments into many smaller states controlled by radical Muslim elements, India will never be free of the constant fear of violence and fear. All you have to do is look at what happened in Afghanistan and think to yourself, what will happen if that starts moving all over that that's why I think that I consider this Kashmir issue to be really the linchpin of peace in that area. If we can resolve that one, well, we can put a lot of things to bed around it. You have to ask how anybody can be optimistic about it, but you got to remember I'm Irish, and the Irish fought for 700 years over these kinds of issues, and they're not there yet. They're still struggling along the edges, but I do believe that when human beings get tired of fighting and realize that killing your children and taking away all your opportunities for everybody is not anybody's best interest, they begin to get more reasonable, and I think that that's the situation that the subcontinent is now in. Now, if Pakistan were to achieve a true secular democracy, such as India's, India would be able to reap a whirlwind of benefits, especially the ability to cooperate and concentrate on more global and security and political questions. With a stable democratic neighborhood, India would be able to project its influence far beyond South Asia and become the world leader that Nehru really envisioned. A politically stable secular Pakistan would also yield subtle economic benefits for India. India's total economic boom has been domestically driven. They have not been very much out in the world, but certainly with 150 million people living next door, if you could make the kind of relationship that we have today between the United States and Canada and Mexico, the potential for an economic zone is very, very positive and very, very appealing, so that there's positives for both sides if this thing settles down. India's interest in starting down the road toward peace is really praiseworthy. I believe the Vajpayee government has always shown that it's willing to extend its hand in peace no matter how much abuse that outstretched hand has received. I marvel at the strength of the Prime Minister to keep putting his hand out, because I know the people behind him, some of them saying, "You're crazy. They're not going to do anything with you. And don't fiddle around with those people." But he keeps doing it, and I really give him very high marks for that. I think it's time for Pakistan to realize that there is no military remedy to the conflict in Kashmir and accept the genuine peace offers from India. If they would do that now, we would soon see an end to the violence and persecution and suffering that has been inflicted upon the Kashmir people. I was thinking on the way down in the plane about a story that I heard recently, which sort of reminds me of the problem that's going on between India and Pakistan. There's a story told about a man who was living in Alaska, and it had been a very, very hard winter. And he decided he was going to go back to his home in Miami. So he packed his bags and went out and stood by the side of the road and put his thumb out and started hitchhiking to Miami from Alaska. And a big tractor-trailer truck came up next to him and stopped, and the man said, "I'm going to Miami." And the truck driver said, "Well, I'm really sorry, I'm only going to Fort Lauderdale." And so the man said, "Well, I'm going to wait for a truck for Miami." Now, you and I know that there's no perfect solution to this situation between Kashmir and India and Pakistan. But if we wait for the perfect solution and don't keep talking and keep working, we will never get to where we want to be. I think that most of us in the Congress who know anything about this situation, and I would say one other thing to all of you, it's important that you talk to your members of Congress about this. They need to hear from people like the kinds of people who are up here today about what the actual facts are, what the facts on the ground are. The newspapers don't always tell us in the United States everything that's correct. You may have noticed that. And the fact is that they need your input to them. That's one of the things that all of you can do coming out of this conference. I mean, conferences are nice, but what comes out of it at the end ought to be some attempt to make as many members of Congress as possible know what's really going on and what people's attitudes are. And my belief is that with that kind of effort, we can make a change, because there is a desire to bring peace to this area. Before I close, I would like to just say thanks to Dr. Reddy and Dr. Sutashi for putting this whole thing together, and all the rest of you that did a part of it. It's important that people like me have an opportunity to hear the broad range. Sometimes when one person comes into your office, they tell you the story, and you think to yourself, oh, there must be another side to that. Well, I've seen the other sides up here, and I've appreciated being asked to come here today, and thank you very much.
One round more, please. Much to be expected in the Indian subcontinent with the Congressman in the chair. My very efficient Mistress of Ceremonies tells me that we are a little behind, but we do have approximately 10 minutes for questions. So if you could entertain some questions for the Congressman. If there are any. No, these are. Are there any questions for the Congressman? If you would write it on a slip as we did last time. In between, I'm going to pose you a question. You seem to speak of a chance that there could be a democratic secular government in Pakistan. Now, I'm not a bookmaker, but what type of odds do you give for that?
Well, I think you certainly have to be a real optimist to believe that could happen. But I do think that we may never get to the perfect place. But if we can keep it from becoming a real fundamentalist place like what they're going through in Iran or in Afghanistan, we have really gone a long way. The general is talking about having elections. He's having elections at the lower level. He's talking about having elections next in the states, and then ultimately a top whole country election. That doesn't make a democracy, but it's the first step, and that's where I would like to push him. I think ultimately we may get there.
Thank you. Though I still have to be skeptical. There was this gentleman who was hitching a ride from Alaska to Miami, and so he had this truck come by, and he said, I want to go to Miami. The opinion of most of the people in this room is, you're on the wrong side of the road, kid, I'm going to the North Pole. Here's a question for the Congressman. Fundamentalists are using the vulnerability of democratic traditions, human rights, to further their cause. In Palestine, in Kosovo, and in Chechnya. How do we counter this?
Fundamentalists are using the vulnerability of democratic traditions, human rights, to further their cause. I don't know that I know exactly what the questioner means by this, but this whole issue of human rights and how the United States exerts leadership in this area is very, very difficult. We talk about human rights. I was just in Germany. And when you go to Europe, every European says to you, how can you talk about human rights to us when you have capital punishment? And on Monday, we're going to execute somebody. Our government is going to execute somebody. And this moral high ground of appealing to human rights, all of us want human rights and want to work toward it. But it's awful that at times you are very upset being an American, that your government could be doing that.
Thank you. Simple question. Why not declare Pakistan a terrorist state?
I don't like to do anything that I can't see how that's going to make things better. You can name things, or you can sort of point out the problems. I would rather focus on how do we get people sitting down at the table and talking, and calling each other names back and forth across the fence doesn't really move the ball forward. And I am one of those people who would much rather have them sitting down. If they sit down in wherever, I don't know what place is the best place for an India-Pakistan meeting, but wherever they're going to sit down, if they sit there for 10 years, I don't care, as long as the violence stops. That's what I really want. And I don't think you stop violence by declaring anybody one way or the other.
Well, there's a more pointed question then. Is there a chance we will stop supplying arms to Pakistan?
Unfortunately, I'm in the minority here. I vote against that kind of stuff. And I think that listening to this is so reminiscent of some of my Central American experiences. I was in El Salvador, and a nun took me in her Jeep up here to this village that had been destroyed. And you can tell when a bullet has come through from the top of a roof, through a metal roof. You can tell which way the bullet went. And so they told us that the government had attacked this village. And the El Salvador government said, no, that's not true. But when you get on the ground and you pick up these fragments that say made in the United States, I've got 6 or 8 of them in my desk drawer in Washington, D.C., you say to yourself, this is wrong. And in my view, our country is on the wrong track in using the arms industry as we do as a means of building our industry. One of my worries about this whole business about the nuclear missile shield is that we're going to set off a whole round of countries beginning to think we have to prepare ourselves or arm ourselves or whatever. And I'm with whoever wrote the question. I'm for cutting out the arms sales permanently.
Our beautiful Mr. Hussain tells me that I can take one more question for the Congressman, and this is from Pakistan Link. At the end of the last Clinton visit to India, Pakistan, President Clinton talked of an adequate solution to Kashmir being found. Can you elaborate on this?
I'll never speak for the president. I don't know what he was talking about. I think, I feel very humble and very ill-prepared, really, to stand up here and say what the adequate solution is. I don't think that we Americans, at least my kind of Americans, maybe some Indian Americans could do it, but this kind of American is going to have an awful hard time moving into a situation that's had this much history and this much antipathy and this many people die and say, I know what you should do. Here's the answer. I really think that our politicians should not take that position. It really has to be one of facilitating in any way possible. And when one side says they want help and another side says they don't want the United States in, it's very hard for us to step in. So I'm one who will wait and eager to be helpful, but I don't have an answer.
I could not bypass this one. This is a submission from the floor that is a factual point. The U.S. government does not supply arms to Pakistan at present. Could you comment on that?
That may be right. I'm not absolutely sure what is in the military budget, but I suspect most of what's there has come through the Taliban, through the arms that were sent to Afghanistan. It's not been directly sent to Pakistan.
Thank you very much, Congressman.
I just want to say the Congressman just displayed an incredible insight and grasp on the geopolitical factors affecting a region of the world so far away from our country here in America. And just want to applaud him for all his love and concern. Don't leave just yet because I have a question for you. But I was going to say on behalf of everyone in this room here, I really want to applaud you for all your contributions to these United States of America and to India. And And my question for you is, how about considering a run for the White House 4 years from now? What do you say, guys?
Surely you're jesting.
Actually, I'm not, but we'll talk again. All right. Just a quick announcement that I had been asked to make earlier and that I forgot. There is a membership drive going on for the association, Indo-American Kashmir Foundation, and Forum, I'm sorry. And I believe, is it Mr. Upinder Kaul who's going to be taking those? Yes, he's way there in the back. So those of you who need to renew your membership or become members, please talk to Mr. Kaul. Also, before we move on, I wanted to just thank Dr. Kundu for that wonderful PowerPoint presentation that he put together. And I also wanted to thank the person responsible for making sure that we got to see that, and that's Roma Truck, who's sitting right here. Just give her a hand. Okay, we're going to hear very briefly from one more person, and then we move on to the next panel. And I'm going to ask Mr. Gaurang Desai, who is the president of Northern California chapter of Friends of India Society. I guess this is the local chapter. And Gaurang is a very active individual in the community and has been focusing on Internet Media Watch and lobbying efforts. Under his leadership, the association coordinated various programs, including the Great Human Chain on the Golden Gate Bridge during the Kargil War. Kashmir is a top priority for the organization, and they have actually coordinated various media mobilization efforts, including letter writing, campaigns, protests, lectures, and even Shraddhanjali programs related to incidents in Kashmir. So Gaurang, I'd invite you to come up and say a few words to our audience, and then we'll move on to the next session.
Thank you, everyone. We heard a lot of experts here, and also Mr. McDermott. So it would sound like, if I say something, it might be either reputation. But before I start, one of the things I'd like to say is that instead of writing letters in response to Mr. Bonia's op-ed in Washington Post, I'll rather write a letter to Mr. McDermott asking for $1,000 rebate check instead of $600. So I'm hoping that we don't have to work to resolve the Kashmir issue for too long. But as I begin, as I said, you may think that I may be repeating some things, but it is just one more perspective that I'd like to put forward. We have heard everyone providing us a lot of facts, a lot of insight about history. And this is not just political history. We heard about cultural history. We talked about religious history. So all this rolled in is an important aspect of resolving the issue. One can go on in the past and slice up a time frame and look at it, and you'll see that Jammu and Kashmir have always been part of India, either culturally, religiously, and politically. For example, if you can go back in Hindu scriptures, Lord Shiva received Ganga on his hair and he was in Kashmir. So it's not something new. People think that history of Kashmir is only from 1947. That is not true. It goes a long way. Kashmir is like Mecca for Muslims, Israel for Jews. Same way, Kashmir is part of India in that relation, religious as well as cultural. We know what has gone wrong so far. And the bottom line is, there are a band of terrorists, and let me make it clear, they are terrorists. They are not freedom fighters, nor are they insurgents, or in 90–95% of the cases, they're not even local Muslims. So it is definitely terrorists who have been using jihadi as their weapon, Islam as their weapon, to basically take care of the issue they want to, which is Islamization. And this is not freedom fighting. For example, we are seeing siblings of this kind of terrorism even here in the US. We know World Trade Center. We know USS Cole was bombed. It is not, it may seem right now that it's not affecting the United States, but it is affecting one way or other, and it will take time before we can resolve that. And if you don't pay careful attention, it will continue on, and it will basically take over. We know what Islam can do in terms of jihadi or terrorist mentality. We have seen Taliban's recent days. Buddha statue in Bamiyan asking Hindus and Sikhs in Afghanistan to wear yellow patches to identify them. This is as close to Nazism as we can get. So it is important that we crush the terrorism part, no matter what the religion is, before it engulfs us. As Mr. Barimsky indicated, we have unknowingly fueled the fire, which we have all agreed in some way, whether we are supporting Afghanistan or trying to bring down the Soviet Union. But the fact is that these terrorists have better equipment and arms than Indian soldiers. So it has become very difficult. We have seen enough goodwill from India. We have seen time after time, hands of friendship forwarded, and what has happened? Somebody's chopped off the hands. Right now, as we have been told, that Mr. Musharraf, who is, many consider him a butcher of Kargil because he was one of the key instigators of Kargil. And even he has been forwarded hand. If you don't see any solution come up, then I'm afraid that there might be a time when we'll see that there is no solution. Right now, each and every time when we have seen we have forwarded hand, there's something that has come back and hurt us. This time when we are forwarding our hand, many of you may not realize, but earthquake hit Kutch area, the borders are being taken away so that they can infiltrate there. So the issue is not that, whether Kashmir is going to be dissolved or not. No matter what you do, you can give them Kashmir, they'll come for some other part of Bharat or India. And that's where we want to stop. We need to know what will bring the peace. It is not whether Kashmir only or Kutch only or some other part of the India. It is continuously going on, and there are always a target, so to speaking, that we need to do something more. It's like corporate mentality here. We say that we need to achieve certain goals, and it seems like these terrorists also have this kind of goals that we take one part like Kashmir, then we'll go to Kutch, then we'll go to XYZ. It's not going to stop. So the stopping of this problem is taking care of terrorism. It is not that Pakistan and India, because if terrorism is taken care of and if Kashmir is dissolved, many Pakistanis find hard time explaining their existence, because some of these issues which are religion related, they will be gone away. And so I think that's where we need to focus on. We have seen a lot of innocent people killed, which I don't have to mention because we have heard enough of that. And so basically the idea is that whatever we do, we can have forums like this one we have today. We can have as many congressmen, as many Indian politicians talk about different things. But one thing that we need to talk about, which is how are we going to take care of terrorism? And only way you can do that is with a firm hand. There are times when we say turn the other cheek, but there are also times when you have to fight fire with fire. If you don't resolve this right now, it will continue on, and there will be nobody there to live in peace, not just in Kashmir, but most of the part of the world. So what I request is whether a congressman or other people, whoever are here listening, do one thing and try to come to the solution of removing terrorism rather than any other sorts of resolutions, let's pass this peace resolution and that peace resolution. That will not work. And I think that's all I would like to say.
Thank you so much, Gaurav. Now, I just want to say all of you have been a wonderful audience. I know it's a lot of information to take in, and we've been doing this most of the day. But our speakers have put in a lot of time and effort into preparing their presentations, a lot of research. So I'm going to ask that we all give them the same amount of courtesy and attention as we did to our earlier panels. We have 2 panels left now, and let me put on my reading glasses here. The next session is titled Restoring Normalcy, and this will be moderated by Dr. Vijay K. Saswal. Dr. Saswal is the current president of the Indo-American Kashmir Forum, which of course is a national organization of overseas Kashmiris. He is also one of the founding members of the organization, and according to conference convener Jeevan Jutsi, Dr. Saswal is the heart and soul of the organization and is responsible for inviting several of the outstanding speakers to this conference. So let's give him a big hand. And of course, I'm going to ask you to introduce the panelists and moderate the session and keep an eye on the time.
Thank you very much. I'd like to request the panelists, please come and join me here. It's for Ambassador Howard Schaefer, Professor Sardesai, and Mr. Durganati Munshi. What we tried to do in the last 2 panel discussions is essentially looking at the future, in the future. The first one we took on is essentially looking at the steps that need to be considered by all the parties involved in terms of restoring normalcy or some semblance of normalcy in the near term. And then we have a second session following it, which is looking in terms of a long-term possible solutions restoring the stability and peace in the region. So we'll start with this one, and I can tell you the challenges are undiminished. You have, as we heard earlier, violence continues. Basically, the toll is being taken by all sides. By all sides, I mean not only the militants and the security forces, but also from the civilians. It's not something that has gone down. You have now primarily evolution of new militancy organizations like Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Toiba, Harakatul Mujahideen, which are primarily operated and managed and financed by sources, in fact, either from the remnants of the Taliban or even beyond. You have a new movement entering the system, which is the Fidaeens. Fidaeens being the suicide bombers. In most cases, that operation is financed by the Wahhabi Muslim movement out of Saudi Arabia and Middle East. Basically, essentially, you're buying yourself, if you don't know what Wahhabi is, it's buying yourself a ticket in the paradise by investing in somebody who will die for your cause. You have a situation where the social fabric has been affected. The civilians, particularly the youth, have very little outlets in the valley right now. You have tremendous problems with mental depression. You have tremendous problems with teenage pregnancies, one of the unsaid spoken words which gets translated into, say, for example, at London Women's Hospital as children born, stillborn during the childbirth, when in fact many of them were actually abortions. You have a situation where India has now declared the ceasefire is over. I think the search and cordon missions will begin again. and perhaps that will have its own implications. But having said that, I can also tell you there are certain things which are very interesting. The circus environment in front of the foreign media continues. You get one CNN reporter there, certainly that will attract all kinds of flies up there, which will essentially put up a nice stage show about, which involves anywhere from explaining the pain and pleasure to the essentially teardrops, and 15 minutes later when the camera is gone, it's almost like they were different people. That show is only Kashmiris can do, we know that, and that show continues. Construction boom. Believe it or not, you can't get a mason or a carpenter in Srinagar these days at any price. Because the construction of the homes is fiercely proceeding in spite of all the news you hear about militancy. A lot of agricultural land, particularly between Srinagar and Kirwani, has been converted to homes. Kashmir does not have a wealth tax, and there are other reasons why that money is being converted into tax into real estate, but there's a real estate frenzy going on in Kashmir. I could go on and on, but I think that the thing to understand is, from our perspective, the biggest factor that is unsettling to us is that our community is not there. Our community is in a state of exile, and we don't really see a normalcy, near term or long term, without essentially that piece of the puzzle being brought back into the puzzle. Well, to help us with the understanding of this all and looking into the future, we have three very outstanding speakers. I'm really, it's my privilege, in fact, to announce these speakers. I'll follow the same format that has been done. I'll introduce the first speaker in detail and then follow them up with the following people who make the presentations. I request that you please collect your comments, put them on a card, and someone will bring them up to the table to me. We'll keep the questions towards the end, and we'll try our best to stay with the time. The first speaker is Ambassador Howard Schaefer. Ambassador Howard, Ambassador Schaefer is a retired U.S. Foreign Office Service officer with long experience in South Asia. He served for 8 years in New Delhi, 3 in Pakistan, and culminated his many years in the region when he was appointed U.S. Ambassador to Bangladesh during the Reagan administration. He has also dealt with South Asian policy issues for many years at the State Department, where he served as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for South Asia. If you recall, that was at one time the highest bureaucratic post in the State Department for South Asia. Ambassador Schaefer's biography of a previous ambassador, one of the beloved ambassadors of the United States, is Just About to India, was published by the Harvard University Press in 1993. He's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and the Kashmir Study Group. He has written many articles about South Asia and Kashmir. And Ambassador Howard Schaefer, we welcome you to our conference.
Thank you very much, Vijay. It's great to be here, and I thank the sponsors of this conference for inviting me to participate. My association with Kashmir goes way back to the time when I was a fairly junior officer in the American Embassy in New Delhi, and I went up to the valley and then to Jammu at the time of the Hazrat Bal theft. The first Kashmiri pundit leader I came to know well, was D.P. Dar, who at that point was Home Minister in the government of G.M. Sadek. Mr. Dar facilitated my travel around the state, for which he received a certain amount of criticism. Why did you help this meddler from the U.S. Embassy in New Delhi get around Kashmir? Well, DP managed to deal with that criticism, and he went on, as you all know, to great things in the government of India. He was indeed a great man. My last visit to Kashmir was only about 3 months ago when I went to Srinagar briefly. I was not able, unfortunately, because of time constraints, to get down to Jammu. I was in Jammu a few years back. I had the opportunity then to visit the camp, and I know from my own personal experience what the suffering of the Pandit community has been in the state. I think it's very appropriate that you should have your final 2 sessions, your final 2 panels, dealing with the subjects first of restoring normalcy and then discussing a framework for peace. The 2 really go hand in hand. I might also say, if I can be facetious for just a moment, that they also offer an opportunity for me and my wife to serve on different panels and avoid disagreeing with one another in public. But they are appropriately linked because no real progress towards a settlement, a solution to the Kashmir problem, can be had unless the situation on the ground in the state improves. And that improvement, of course, could set the stage for the return of the Pandit community to the valley. By the same token, no significant progress on the restoration of normalcy can be made unless there is movement towards a political settlement. In short, Kashmir needs to be dealt with as a political problem, not merely as a law and order issue. Now, what can be done towards tackling the situation, violent situation, so well described by Vijay just a moment ago, so that a sense of security for individual Kashmiris is better than it is now? I'd like to touch on 3 points. First is the reduction of cross-line of control infiltration from the Pakistan side. The second is an improvement in the human rights situation on the Indian side. And finally, in this segment, I want to talk about the importance of reducing the very large Indian military presence in the valley. Starting with the issue of dealing with this very difficult situation in which Pakistan has supported the insurgency. I think it's important to note at the outset that the insurgency, the present dissidence which began in 1989, was not created by Pakistan. It was, at least originally, a homegrown problem, as many Indians will say. It seems to many Indians who are candid enough to admit it, that it was the result of serious Indian mismanagement of the situation in the part of Kashmir controlled by India. At present, I would estimate that 2/3 of the insurgents are from the Indian side, that is, Kashmiris. The other 1/3 from the Pakistan side or elsewhere in the Islamic world. Pakistan's support is highly important, despite the continuing majority participation by Kashmiri Muslims normally resident on the Indian side. Provision of training, of arms, of money, of safe haven, and diplomatic support.
What is most important is to persuade the government of Pakistan under General Musharraf to lessen this support. And that's not easy in my playing that it can be easy. There are many motivations for Pakistan's support for the insurgency. And you don't have to be a fundamentalist. You don't have to be a jihadist to feel, if you were a Pakistani, that the Kashmiri cause, as they call it, deserves Pakistan's support. Many Pakistanis, including many friends of ours, are quite persuaded that this is the right battle, and that just as East Timor eventually won its freedom, so will Kashmir win its freedom from Indian control. Another problem that General Musharraf and the government of Pakistan face, if they are indeed interested in lessening the degree of support that they provide to the insurgents, is the political difficulties involved and the strong support that the Jamaat-e-Islami and other fundamentalist groups in Pakistan provide the government. It may be a military government, but it still has to look to the political side for support. Nonetheless, I am persuaded after talking to many Pakistanis that there are a growing number on that side who question the sense of Pakistan continuing this adventure in Kashmir. That here is a country, Pakistanis, smart Pakistanis recognize, which has tremendous problems. And why, these Pakistanis will ask, do they have to take on the additional problem of Kashmir? These people may be a silent minority, but I'm quite persuaded that their numbers are growing. There are many of them who will say the Kashmiris, they're talking of Kashmiri Muslims, are an ungrateful lot. We've done so much for them, and now what they want is their independence. They don't want to become part of Pakistan. Let us tend to our own knitting. I reiterate that that's a minority view now, but I think under the right circumstances, it could grow. Now, what are these circumstances? I think what is really important is the beginning of a dialogue between India and Pakistan. And I was very much encouraged, as Congressman McDermott, many of you I'm sure also were, by the Indian government's decision to invite General Musharraf to come to India for discussions. It seems to me that only in the context of such discussions and progress in discussions not only about Kashmir, but about other India-Pakistan issues that the government of Pakistan may be more amenable than it is now to agreeing to reduce the degree of assistance that it provides. At the same time, there will always be Pakistanis who will say, once you stop assisting the insurgency, India will lose interest in any kind of settlement other than a settlement along the lines that they have long favored. So what is needed is a process. International pressure on the government of Pakistan will also be important. I very much admired the straight leading talk that President Clinton gave to the people of Pakistan during his brief visit to Islamabad. He pointed out to them that assistance to the insurgents, changing efforts to change the line of control would get nowhere. They were a dead end. And I hope that over time, the Bush administration will take a similar position in urging the government of Pakistan to stop this venture on the Indian side. Now, another important aspect I mentioned is improvement in the human rights situation in the state. This situation is not good. You don't have to take it from me. You can take it from a recent report prepared by several Indian human rights groups which went up to Kashmir and observed the situation firsthand. I would say that this human rights reports criticized both the government of India and its military, as well as the state government. And I think unless the situation is improved, the feeling of alienation that many Kashmiris sense towards the government of India will persist. Final point of these three is the reduction of the size of the Indian military presence, much resented in the state, but it seems to me that that reduction would have to come step by step in accordance with the willingness of the government of Pakistan to quit, or at least to reduce its support for the insurgents. Now, I've mentioned the importance of the dialogue between the government of India and the government of Pakistan. But what's also vital is a dialogue between New Delhi and Srinagar. My own view is that the object of this dialogue should be drawing the dissidents, the Hurriyat and others, into the mainstream of Indian politics. It may only be arranged by the granting of greater autonomy to the state or part of the state. There will be difficulties in getting such a dialogue moving in any meaningful way. We're familiar with Casey Hunt's efforts, and I hope that they will go on. The Hurriyat position has been not very promising, but I think if Hunt, for whom I have high regard, persists, it's possible that some progress will be made. And I'm not talking here about tripartite talks, but it's important to associate Kashmiri opinion in any settlement. This cannot simply be a settlement based on an agreement between India and Pakistan. The Kashmiri people, too, must participate. The need for political follow-up to positive moves on the ground has been, I think, vividly illustrated by the fate of the ceasefire that the Indians declared in the holy month of Ramzan and twice or thrice extended. The problem, as many Indian observers pointed out at the time, was that there was no follow-through. The government of India did not appear to have any political plan to supplement its ceasefire. Opinions were divided within the government of India as to how to proceed, and nothing very much happened. And this surfaced particularly on the issue of whether the Hurriyat leaders should be allowed to go to Pakistan. These Hurriyat leaders told me and others that they wanted to go to Pakistan because they wanted to talk to the Pakistan government, to other elements of the Pakistani political scene, and to the people they described as the boys with the guns. to give peace a chance. Well, they never were allowed to go, and I think that was a mistake. I also think it was a mistake because I sense that one of the motives of these Hurriyat leaders in wanting to go to Pakistan was in a way to inoculate themselves against later charges when they began talking to the Indians that they were selling out Kashmiri Muslim interests. And these charges would surely have been made. As you know, they're now very reluctant to speak. Any effort to improve the situation on the ground is going to be vulnerable to troublemakers of various sorts. This was true at the time of the Hizbul Mujahideen unilateral ceasefire, when other militant groups stepped up their attacks. And the same thing has happened during the more recent Indian-declared unilateral ceasefire. There are a lot of people in Kashmir, and they are not merely sympathizers of jihad or of Kashmiri independence or autonomy or whatever, who are potential troublemakers. There are people who simply have a stake in a continuing struggle or a stake in political power. When Vijay talked about these large houses which had come up in Srinagar, I think it can be said that many of these quite palatial residences were erected as a result of money gained by the owners during this prolonged militancy. I think AJ is giving me the sign, and I will stop there. I've tried to be as candid as possible with you, and I appreciate your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Master Chief. Our next speaker, I guess in a sense, figuratively and literally, doesn't need any introduction. Professor Damodar Sarasai, historian par excellence, UCLA.
Thank you, Vijay. This panel is for restoring norms, right, suggestions. And Ambassador Sheffer rightly said that it is connected with solutions. So I might also try a mix of both. Normalcy. What does that mean? Yesterday I read a statement by Benazir Bhutto. And she said, Musharraf has no right to arrive at any solution with India. And Bajpayee should not be respecting, in fact, a person like Musharraf signing any agreement. Which suggested to me two things. One is, let Musharraf get all the concessions, offer of concessions from Bajpayee, and say, look, I have got to consult the people. And for that I would have to wait until the next elections. Benazir says so, Musharraf says so. What does normalcy mean for Benazir? It means bring back democracy and possibly bring back her to power. What does normalcy mean to Vajpayee, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, in a lighter way? Well, let my second knee surgery also get over. Let me not be considered a prime minister who went to talks in a weak-kneed situation. Somebody might say, well, if he wants to give a good kick, he has to have a good knee. That also can be normalcy. What does normalcy mean for the refugees who have been away for 12 years? Well, for them the normalcy means a chance to go home, to build the homes. And since normalcy is being urged upon by Western nations, including our United States, therefore, maybe World Bank, maybe IMF, maybe United States, maybe the group of 8 should come up with enough funds to do that construction work, Vijay, that you just talked about, for rebuilding homes for the 350,000 Pandits. That is normalcy. Why this interest in normalcy? Why this interest in normalcy and talks? Yes, Western nations always say talk. Talking is better. But that is what our Eastern philosophy